Welcome back to the Farm Show. That's Farm and Ranch, Missouri, here on Westplex Talk 1045. The hottest topic in many counties throughout Missouri, including our four-county broadcast area here, are data centers. And this week on the Brad and John Show, which you can hear Monday through Friday from 7 to 8 a.m. right here on Westplex Talk, we discussed three data centers in particular this week. The first one we discussed was a Franklin County proposed data center. The second one we discussed was a data center in Warrenton. And the third was a Foristell data center. We'll start today by playing a clip from the Thursday edition of the Brad and John Show, in which Brad and I discussed the data centers in Franklin County as well as Warren County. At the end of this segment, we're going to talk about where the American Farm Bureau Federation is on data centers and also what could potentially be strange bedfellows in opposition to data centers. First, we'll play that clip from Thursday where Brad and I talk about Franklin County and also Warren County. Yesterday, we discussed the data center conundrum in Franklin County and the overflow crowd that showed up to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to make their feelings, their emotions, and sometimes their facts heard. More details came out in today's edition of the Washington Missourian by reporter Jeff Folsom. His headline, Shaw Nature Reserve outlines requests for data centers at Franklin County, as Franklin County tables the issue. Now, yesterday when we breezed through this story, I mentioned that there were some folks that wanted a 1-year moratorium, and then a 4-month moratorium, and then a 1 month, and then finally 6 months. But here's where Jeff gives more detail than I provided yesterday. The Franklin County Commission has the final decision on whether the county continues tabling data center regulations and any rezonings. No public meetings are currently scheduled on the topic. So you're likely an expert on this, Brad, because you've had a lot of dealings with planning and zoning commissions over the years. The Planning and Zoning Commission can make one decision, but the county could come in and say, hey, we're not going to table all data center regulations, or hey, we are going to table them for another 6 months. So let's get to where Folsom provides more specificity today than I provided yesterday. After tabling the discussion to the Planning Commission's February meeting was discussed, Planning Commission Vice Chair initially motioned to have a year-long moratorium on data centers, similar to what is in place in St. Charles County. But the problem with that, as was pointed out by County Planning Director Nicole Zilke, that a moratorium would require an additional public hearing, which would require public notice, and then there would have to be a vote on a 1-year moratorium. But the 6-month moratorium could be passed by the Planning and Zoning Commission just the other night on Tuesday. So that's exactly what happened. So yesterday when I was describing this, I kind of breezed through it and I was a bit flip in describing that timeline. So I wanted to make sure that we got that. Folsom also notes something that I noticed yesterday. I went to the Franklin County website and I clicked on the YouTube video of their public video, which has already more than 6,000 views of the live stream. And there were hundreds of people in overflow rooms and waiting in hallways. And you'll appreciate this, Brad. The live stream was on somehow about a 30-second delay. So folks were watching the live stream in a conference room down the hallway. So when people in the main hearing room would clap and applaud and essentially make a scene, and then calm down, 30 seconds later, you'd hear people in a hallway people in a conference room down the hallway making a scene and clapping and being loud. It was quite discombobulating. So where we are today, Jeff Folsom points out a bunch of comments from the folks from the Shaw Nature Reserve. And a curious note here that you might know, Brad, that I didn't know. An attorney for the Echo Camps came out and said, well, it's true that St. Charles County has put a 1-year moratorium on brand new data centers, but, quote, the moratorium only went into place after 12 data centers were already built. So in other words, St. Charles County has a ton of progress, what some would call progress, on data centers before before the county said, whoa, 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 no more data centers for a year. So that's different than Franklin County saying, hey, no data centers, period, for 6 months. And as a teaser to number one, which I know we're going to get into just briefly, the attorney for the Eckelkamps, David Baylord, says, quote, I also want to point out that I read yesterday that the county of Warren County has approved a data center and submitted that to the council for final approval. So in other words, I think what the Eckelkamps attorney is saying here is, look, St. Charles County's made a ton of progress. They're just hitting the pause button for now. And Warren County's moving ahead as well. Let's get with it, folks.
See, the angle on this that I can't believe nobody has taken, and I've talked about this already. John's going to throw the Dedham tots at me.
There's no P.
Okay, the Dedham tots at me. And what does that mean again, John? Explain for new listeners.
It means we've discussed this many times on the show. And what gets to us is that everybody complains about wanting their cell phone to work, but nobody wants a cell phone tower built. Here we go again.
No. My point is there already is a large data center right in the outskirts of Washington or on the very edge of the city limits of Washington. The Mercy Hospital data center has been there for, I guess, like 10 years now. And
yeah, you did a great job describing that whole thing in detail yesterday.
And
Brad.
Nobody talks about it. And to the point where are people's kids being sterilized by the Mercy data center? Is there noise by the Mercy data center? Is the electric rates in Washington gone up? Well, they probably have like every place else, but that's a whole other story. And if I were the guy making the charge, I would say, hey, you Franklin County people, how many of you have been to the Mercy Hospital right there on Highway 47 and 5th Street in Washington? And probably 2/3 of maybe 3/4.
They would raise their hand and you say, guess what? They have a data center here.
Yeah.
Now, you neglect the fact that data center also has an urgent care down in the basement.
No, it doesn't.
So you can take your kids in there when it's late at night and you don't want to go to the doctor, and you can sit next to some old bat who's hacking up a lung, and then some little kid named Kiki who apparently has the runs and can't make it to the bathroom in time. That's always a good time at the urgent care. I can't wait to get to story number one. Let's hit the button.
John, people were trying to eat that breakfast.
The number one.
Yeah. And thankfully for them and their glycemic index, they weren't shoving a little Debbie in their mouth while John does the top three. Warrenton Alderman OK Data Center Complex, brought to us by Mark Schlinkman of the Post-Dispatch. Now, I bring this up because it's a juxtaposition of the two stories. And we don't have a lot of time here, Brad, left in A block. But Mark writes, city aldermen have given the green light to build a data center complex on 337 acres near Interstate 70. The 6-0 vote on Tuesday, 6-0. They move ahead with the project. It was in contrast to recent problems. And then Mark goes on to point out things in Foristell, things in Franklin County. A gentleman from the Warren County Economic Development Council, Steve Etcher, says this project alone will increase by 110% the tax revenues flowing into our community. So I'll spare you all the details here, Brad, in the interest of time. But the thing that I wanted your input on, because you know this area as well as anyone, how is it that we could have a proposal, we as a region could have a proposal in Foristell that's met with strong opposition, and Franklin County, particularly the Gray Summit location, big opposition, overflow traffic. And then we have just to the west of us in Montgomery County, Amazon's building a data center that doesn't seem to have much pushback. And then we also have a Warrenton data center that passes 6-0. Why do some data centers run into a lot of opposition and other ones don't?
It's because of the people that live in those areas. The Warren County people are, first off, I'm surprised that anything passes what did you say, the Warren County Commission, 6-0? Is that what
yes, 6-0. Yeah. The last time they voted on that, it was Wendy Nordwald's peekaboo dress.
They must have increased the commission because when I was going before the commission years ago, there were only 3 dudes right there, and 2 of them were in bib overalls. But what does that tell you? I could give you a whole dissertation on this, John. It's because of the fact that those people are growth-minded people. They welcome people, except for transmitter sites. They welcome people into the community, and they want to grow. They want to be financially, sound with good tax base and the other thing. And the rest of the people in St. Charles County and Franklin County, it's gotten to the point where they're against everything. Everything. You can't do anything anymore. So what I think we should have, I think the whole solution to this, I think that they should hire Bill Hennessy as their spokesperson in Franklin County and have him go down.
Yeah. How would he label them?
I don't know. Bill's a nice guy. I shouldn't even said that.
Okay, that's the end of that clip. We're back here to Saturday now. At the end of that clip, by the way, Brad was referencing an offhand comment made by O'Fallon Mayor Bill Hennessy, in which he called members of the city council effing idiots. Neither here nor there. Let's get into a clip from yesterday's Brad and John show, in which we discussed a data center proposal in Foristell. Boy, at the beginning of the week, I didn't think that we'd spend so much mind share on data centers. But in the hubbub this week of Franklin County and in the hubbub of Warrenton, let me take responsibility. I neglected to point out a development in St. Charles County of a data center that we've discussed previously, and that is movement. Yes, movement on the Foristell data center. Remember this story, Brad? Foristell, and then the mayor just kind of up and left. You remember us talking about that?
Yeah, because he claimed he didn't say they claimed he had a conflict of interest because the company works for sells to data centers. But he said I think he's newly elected. I think he was just elected, last November or November before, that he didn't realize the work-life balance between him having a full-time job and being the mayor, so that's why he quit. But that's what he says.
Yeah, that's his version of the story, sure. And if we could take that at face value. And there was a development this week, though. While everybody was paying attention to Franklin County, while we were paying attention to Franklin County, pardon me, and also Warren County, the city of Foristell held a public hearing that Tuesday. That was January 20th, I believe, to discuss, or maybe, let's see, was the 20th Monday or Tuesday, Brad? That would have been Tuesday. I should have looked that up before we started. Anyway, on January 20th, the Foristell folks got together, and they did indeed discuss annexation. And what's unique about this discussion is the city council is going way far out of their way to say that right now, the only thing they're discussing is annexing all that acreage into city limits. And a woman from the city, Board of Aldermen President Constance Palmer, she says, quote, "It's appropriate to note that no formal application for a data center has been submitted to the city. If someone wants to develop the land after it is annexed into the city, further actions such as rezoning, etc., are required." Now, probably good news, if you were into opposing these sort of things, is that the city is saying, look, by the next time we get together, and every time we get together on February 2nd, we're going to pick a big venue because we don't want to be overrun by citizens. And frankly, the Warrenton meeting and the Franklin County meeting hadn't happened yet. But I think the folks in Foristell say, look, there's a whole lot of people that are interested. And we're just talking about annexation now. So come February 2nd, there's going to be a big meeting room. There's going to be a big facility that can hold all the people that will probably not be happy. And Brad, I'll point out one more data point here that the reporter brings us. And by the way, this is brought to us by Mid-Rivers News Magazine. They produce West News Magazine, Mid-Rivers News Magazine, a woman named Jessica Marie Baumgartner. Even though this public hearing held on the 20th was only for annexation and not technically about data centers, 21 residents spoke. And I think you could probably guess what their concerns were, Brad. None of them, as I read this, mentioned a certain wattage or a certain hertz of humming, but some did talk about water. They want to know, look, we've already have depleted water wells around here, around housing developments. How can you assure us that these data centers aren't going to just gobble up all of our community's water? So I guess the takeaway here, Brad, is that the Foristell development was buried in the news of the other nearby developments, and a big meeting is coming on February 2nd.
We talked about this the other day, and you mentioned, matter of fact, I think it was yesterday, where you said, what's the difference between the people in Franklin County as opposed to Warren County, where they are pretty much moving along with a new data center, and in Montgomery County? And I say there's a lot of difference, and I think to a certain extent, you don't drive much on 70 out west, but I don't know if it's actually in Warren County, in extreme western Warren County, or it's extreme eastern Montgomery County, but they built this big monstrous plant out there called Certainty, which makes shingles. And what's interesting about it is it has its own water tower, which I thought was sort of interesting. And out there, when they decided to build that big plant out there, the people didn't oppose it. They welcomed it because of the fact that it brought jobs to the area. It brought, tax base to the area. See, that's the difference between the Franklin and the St. Charles County people and the Warren and the Montgomery County people. The Franklin County people are all rich, and the Warren County and Montgomery people are semi-rich, and they're open to new things like that. See, that's the difference, John.
Yeah, I would have had no idea. I thought anytime you're talking about shingles, it involves another bad report from your doctor.
No.
Okay, and we're back here on Saturday time. We're in real time right now. What all does this matter, and what does it have to do with agriculture? Earlier this month, at the American Farm Bureau Federation annual meeting, the group adopted policies to address the rapid expansion of data centers. Here's a few of the key aspects of the AFBF position. Number one, protection of resources. Delegates passed policy to ensure that data center development does not cause shortages of water and energy for farmers. Secondly, property rights and siting. The policy emphasizes the need to protect private property rights and urges careful consideration of where data centers are sited, ensuring they do not disproportionately impact prime agricultural land. A third position, responsible development. While acknowledging the potential economic benefits of data centers, AFBF supports responsible development with particular focus on minimizing the impact on local ag infrastructure. And finally, local impact concerns. Concerns highlighted during the discussions included the massive electricity and water consumption of AI-focused data centers and their potential to drive up utility costs for rural communities. We should also note that our own Missouri Farm Bureau was instrumental in pushing the national group to adopt a position on data centers. Earlier, I mentioned the fact that there may be some strange bedfellows as it relates to opposition to data centers. And in fact, at a meeting this week in Warrenton, opponents of the Warrenton data center left flyers behind from the Communist Party USA. This was reported in the Missouri Scout newsletter, which is put together by Dave Drebus. You can find it at MoScout. So we could end up having strange bedfellows, Missouri Farm Bureau and Communist Party USA, both skeptical of data centers on ag land. That's all the time we have for this week. Be sure to join us next week at 10 a.m. here on Westplex Talk 1045.